Welcome to the Art of Feminine Negotiation. I'm your host, Cindy Watson. Great to be here as always. And I'm excited to introduce you to Pitz Quattrone. And we're going to be talking about negotiating better health with the Didgeridoo. So he's an interesting guy, and this is an interesting subject, a little unusual today. So welcome, Pitz. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Cindy. It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know Pitts, he is one of a kind for sure. He's like an innovative player. He's a builder. He's an inspiring teacher of the ancient native Australian instrument, the didgeridoo, which I got introduced to back in the 90s when I was traveling through Australia. And since the early 90s, Pitts has been honing his chops and his credentials, and he has become the go-to guy for the didgeridoo. And he's brought the healthy pleasures of didge playing to thousands of kids and adults worldwide, which I love, that he is spreading the word about this really interesting instrument and how people can use it to have a better life. So Fitz, you're probably one of the most famous didgeridoo players worldwide, I would say. And so for our listeners who don't know what the heck a didgeridoo is, why don't you explain what it is to kickstart us?
Sure. Well, thanks for that compliment. Okay, so the didgeridoo, a lot of people consider it to be the world's oldest musical instrument. It comes from the Aboriginal people in northern Australia. If you look at a map of Australia, dead center all the way up to the top, there's the city of Darwin. Just east of Darwin is an area called Arnhem Land. That's where the didgeridoo was born. And no one really knows how old it is. There's some guesses between 1,500 and 40,000 years old. And how the didgeridoo is used traditionally at nighttime around the fire. There's one person telling a story or singing a story, and then there's three or four dancers imitating the movements of what's happening in the story.
Yeah.
And then there's one, sometimes two didgeridoo players, and their job is to imitate the sounds of what the storyteller is
Okay.
talking about.
That's
So
cool.
I like to think the didgeridoo is the original sound effects machine, uh, bringing those words to life.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. And it is such a unique instrument. I remember when I first saw it there, I got a chance to try and play it, and it's not as easy as it looks. It's quite a skill set, an acquired skill set. So, what first attracted you to it?
Well, the sound. You
Yeah.
know, going back to my childhood, I was always the kid in the back of the room in school, making weird sounds and
Funny.
trying to get kids to laugh, and that was the class clown. So whatever worked, those were my tools. But then fast forwarding to in the 1980s, and I first heard the didgeridoo, and it grabbed me really. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what is that thing? So I I learned more and more about it, and soon the novelty kind of wore off. It was not a novelty instrument. I felt more and more connected to the didgeridoo the more I found out about it. And that was in I think 83,
Yeah.
84. Like there was two movies in particular. The Coca-Cola Kid was
Hmm.
one of them that
Don't know that.
was based in Australia with the didgeridoo underneath in the soundtrack, and then the Crocodile Dundee movies.
Oh, yes. God, it's a blast from the past. I remember those. And you're so right about that arresting sound. As you were saying that, I remember walking by when we had, landed in Australia. And I was like, that sound, I was just like, literally was like, what the heck is that? And just absolutely magnetic. So I was going to wait until later, but why don't we now, since we're talking about it, and a lot of people maybe, what the heck, never seen one, probably most have never heard it. So why don't you give us a quick demonstration just so people, our viewers
Sure.
can see it and our listeners can hear it.
Absolutely. Structurally, the didgeridoo is a hollowed out tree branch. That's all it is, but it takes a special technique to get the initial sound and then continue on. So, real quick.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that brings back such memories. My goodness. And I remember being shocked because I played like clarinet for many, many years. So then I thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. And I'm like, holy, this is interesting. Now, how
Yeah,
do you go ahead? Sorry.
I was going to explain, I think, where you were going, like how do you get a sound out of it?
Yeah.
So what the player does is it's a lip flapping technique. That's the embouchure. It's
Yeah.
very loose and wide open, kind of like.
Yeah. Okay.
almost like what a tuba player does or a trombone player with the slide all the way extended. It's not real tight and pressured like what a trumpet player does or even a reed instrument like clarinet. It's all in your lips
Yeah.
and that resonates down the didgeridoo to give you that initial drone, which is your foundation of sound.
Yeah.
That's your first goal when you start playing, is to get that drone nice and solid and consistent, and then we can start adding things to that.
And the sound continues even as you're breathing, right?
Yeah, there's a technique called circular breathing. And what that does is it allows the player to play continuously
Yeah.
without an interruption because the player is breathing while they play.
Yeah. That's why my cousin was a world champ bagpipe player. And I remember always watching where he's taking a breath and the sound's still coming. And as a little kid, I was like, what the heck? Right. That's cool. Now, I often say that negotiating our mindset is our first and most important negotiation. And a lot of people think they can't change who they are. I'd love if you're comfortable explaining your journey of how you negotiated past a history of addictions with the pretty unorthodox method of using the didgeridoo to do that.
Yeah, well, I owe a lot to this hollowed out tree branch. I mean, it pretty much saved me and gave me life missions and now a successful, really rewarding career of passing it on to
Mm.
whoever wants to listen to me in about the didgeridoo. So in my 20s, it was a critical moment where I could have gone down a couple different paths, and one of them was definitely dark, and the other, the didgeridoo, came to me. And luckily, the sound grabbed me enough to pull me away from the dark things. And for a while, I was actually doing both of those, the dark side addiction and the
Yeah.
didgeridoo, and they were battling for me. And so that was like a weird negotiation inside my head.
Yeah.
And a few years later, eventually, I went with the didgeridoo and the dark stuff, drugs, alcohol, some petty crimes. They were in my rear view mirror, and I luckily was awake enough to go with the didgeridoo.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. I love that idea that you said they were battling for me. That struck me as really a powerful image. And I think we all have that. Some more dramatic, some, for many less dramatic sort of circumstances, but definitely we've got that inner voice, and whether it's negotiating what career path to take in our relationships, when we're in relationships that aren't working, just about so many aspects of our life, it feels like there's that inner battle going on, right? Where we can go one way or the other. So what advice do you have for negotiating our mindset, to show up more powerfully, to negotiate the life that we want, to follow that life path? Any tips from your experience along the journey?
Yeah, well, listen to your heart. And also, if you're listening to your heart, then that voice in your head says what you really want to be doing. It's like, oh, do I
Mm.
go to this 9 to 5 job that I hate every day that's a total dead end just because it's a reliable paycheck? Or do you go with your heart and what that voice inside you says, like, oh, I'm an artist, I'm a dancer, I'm a filmmaker, whatever that passion is, go with that. And luckily, again, I went with the didgeridoo and the musical direction. I've always been into music since I was a little kid
Yeah.
and played drums and different percussion instruments growing up. But then when the didge grabbed me, it
Yeah.
was like, all right, let's go. Here we go. This is the real deal, pal.
Yeah. And I like that idea a lot about tapping into our intuition. I think that's great advice because we don't do that a lot in North America. Everything is about logic, right? I mean, all the intellectual exercise, make your pro cons list. And ultimately, I think if we give back, we've lost that art. You talked about sort of the Aboriginal people in Australia, and same, certainly in Canada or the US, if we look at our Indigenous people, they had such tremendous capacity to go in and trust their intuition and be able to guide their life based on that. And I feel like it's a bit of a lost art. So I think that's great advice about trusting the heart and allowing yourself to go in. And as I was asking that, for the didgeridoo, is it like I could almost imagine it being a meditative state almost that allows you to tune in better? Is that true? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing about didgeridoo is, yes, it's a meditative instrument, but if you go to play the didgeridoo and you're really excited, I want to get going on this thing, But the first thing is you must relax.
Well, we could all use some of that.
That's it. So it's a natural grounding thing. It slows down your heart rate. It slows down your breath rate. It's like, okay, in order to get the sound that I really, really want to play, I have to do that
Yeah.
lip flapping, and
Yeah.
just that action right there before you even start, it's beneficial health wise and it's calming you down. So that meditative state really comes into play and it gets better and better and better.
Yeah. And I'm laughing because it's funny, as you say, it's from the very first moment in the interview when you went, I thought, oh my gosh, that is so calming. I just immediately, and that was experiencing it from you, and I could picture myself doing it, and it already sort of lowered the heart rate, felt super grounded. So I totally can see that. So what other health, I mean, you've touched on some of them. So while we're there, I know it helped you certainly past your addictions, which is a pretty powerful testament to the instrument. What other health benefits does the didgeridoo have?
Well, there was this really interesting, groundbreaking study that came out in 2005 by the British Medical Journal, published a study about this doctor in Switzerland who wanted to offer an alternative to sleep apnea treatments,
Okay.
an alternative treatment for sleep apnea. So he found out that playing certain instruments, especially the didgeridoo, works your internal throat muscles that are usually the problem with sleep apnea. So
Wow.
what he did, yeah, he got 25 sleep apnea patients. He brought a didgeridoo teacher in, and that person taught the patients how to play didge. They played for a half an hour a day for 6 days a week for a 4 month period. And at the end of that 4 months, their sleep apnea either dramatically decreased or in most cases completely went away. And
Wow.
how it's been explained to me, I'm not a health care professional,
Yep.
I'm a musician, but doctors have explained it to me. Usually with sleep apnea, eventually the muscles in the throat get loose and flabby and obstruct the airway. So obstructive sleep apnea. And again, working the muscles, playing the didgeridoo gives those muscles an internal workout, especially the circular breathing thing. And I can
Mhm.
explain what that is. But executing the circular breathing breath transition, that is a serious booster for the muscles down in here. So it's like push-ups for those muscles.
Yeah.
And eventually they get back into shape, nice and strong and straight, and they no longer obstruct the airway.
That's remarkable. And as you're doing it and talking about that calming and grounding effect, I think like how powerful for young kids. Like now anxiety is off the charts. We overschedule our kids. We put so much pressure on them. What impact have you found on because I know you do a lot of work out there with youth as well. I mean, other than the joy of playing the instrument, any other benefits that you're seeing with youth who are trying it on?
Yeah, what I'll first say is 99% of kids from age 3 to 17, 18, they're natural didgeridoo
Oh,
players
that's so funny.
be- because they do the lip flapping thing already.
That's so true.
It's great. So they jump right in, especially the younger ones.
Yeah.
So getting back to your question, yes, it boosts self-esteem because some people say, "Oh, I can't play that instrument because I have no musical experience whatsoever and I can't sing a
Yeah.
note." You know what? It doesn't matter. Forget all that stuff. Again, if you can flap your lips, you
Yeah.
can get started.
Yeah.
And I explain that to folks, and they try it, and it's like, "Ooh, I can do this." They may not sound perfect right away. They have to work at it, but it's like, "Oh, I can do this thing." It's like, "Oh, right." It gives them some self-confidence, some self-esteem boosters. Like, "Yeah, I can make this thing sound really cool, and it's fun, and it's healthy," and they don't even realize that it's
Yeah.
at the same time.
You know what? I'm just picturing boardrooms, all of that, like whether, sort of my background is, is in law, but even in the corporate world and all these high stakes deals that are going on. And everybody approaches it with such intensity and stress, and all of which are counterintuitive to getting best negotiated outcomes. I think it'd be a great line of work for you to get out there, because they talk, one of the best things about negotiation is to have some kind of connection exercise that you do together in advance. And what a fabulous that. It serves multiple purposes. It's something people can do, have fun together, can ground each other together, and approaching a negotiation with that sense of calm, which I think opens us up to more collaborative kind of approaches in life. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that idea, Cindy. I think you can be my new agent.
So circle back to the circle breathing when you're saying that, was because I watched my cousin do it. As I say, I assume it's a similar thing with bagpipes. I don't know, but I never thought to even ask him how the heck you do it. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, well, with the bagpipes, the player has the bag. So
Yeah,
when the player's playing, "ring," and then when the player needs to breathe, that player squeezes the bag, and the air in the bag continues the sound for a second or two so the player can breathe.
got it.
Okay, so with the didgeridoo, it's a similar concept, but we don't have a
You don't have a
bag.
bag.
But we have cheek muscles. So that really acts as your bag. So here it is in a super nutshell, very
Yeah,
quick. I'm playing along.
yeah,
Eventually, I need air to breathe
yeah.
and keep going. So what I do is I grab some air in my cheeks on its way out. And
Wow.
with my cheek muscles alone, I squeeze in to empty one puff at a time.
Wow.
So I'm not actually breathing out. I'm just emptying my mouth with those cheek muscles. That little puff
Yeah,
of air keeps my lips flapping for a second.
yeah.
That's my opportunity to breathe up my nose. So
Wow.
I'm playing and I catch some air and I begin to squeeze. And when my cheeks begin to squeeze, that's when I begin to breathe up my nose, one big circle like this.
Yeah. Wow. That's
So when
wild.
I'm playing, you'll see me do that two or three, maybe four times in a row, so I have enough air. Because there's only a little puff of air that,
Yeah,
or a little snort of air that I have up my nose for my
yeah,
lungs. So I need
yeah.
two or three times, and then I can continue on.
You know what's amazing? It's like this instrument was perfectly created for that sort of calming and grounding influence, even physiologically. Like as you're describing the circle breathing, and again, I'm no scientist or healthcare professional either, but it strikes me that that has to be naturally a great way for us to sort of ground and physiologically be able to have, because breathing's so important and we're not taught it really very effectively. So what a great way to do that. So I wanted to circle back to this idea about change, right? Like, because I've often heard that, if we want our life to change, we need to change. What do you think? And obviously, you made that choice many years ago. And as you say, we're facing either a dark path and you chose the light. What's some of the most effective ways to start? I think a lot of people don't change because they just don't know where to start. What are your thoughts on?
Wow. Hmm. That's a big one. Well, I guess the first thing the person needs to do is realize they need to change.
Yeah,
So maybe that's step one. And once they do, oh, I hate my job, I hate my job. Okay, we got that.
yeah,
So okay, what can you do about it? All right. So now it's like you realize that you need some change, and then it's time to work on that. And what is it? How could you work on that? Well, again, what's my heart telling me what to do? I like drawing. Maybe I can be a painter. Okay, maybe I'll take some painting classes at nighttime after work. So it's, I don't have all the answers, but
yeah,
what has worked for me is following my heart. And if you have to do something else during the day or for your income to pay your bills, maybe at nighttime or on the weekends, you can take an extra class or two. And it doesn't have to be for college credits or anything. It could be, adult continuing
yeah,
education. And okay, cool. So I take this class on a Saturday. It's really helping me with. I've always wanted to learn how to cook Indian food. So all right,
mhm,
cool. There's an Indian food class on Saturday morning at the local community college or maybe a restaurant or senior center. It's like, all right, find out more about that thing and then keep doing it, and maybe that will help you.
I like that. There was a lot in there. And again, just to sort of put a pin in that for our listeners, I'm hearing you saying, like, increase your awareness for starters, be really honest with yourself about what's going on, what you're feeling, where the angst is, right? What your options are, but also increasing get more intentional, right? Get intentional about the choices so that we're not letting life happen to us, but that we're starting to design the life, as I call it negotiating our best life. But I think that was some great, great advice. What's one of the most sort of surprising or, sort of shocking things that you've discovered along your journey? You've got a pretty interesting background.
Uh, well, well, one thing is, it still amazes me, and it's part of my mission. Like, people don't even know what the didgeridoo is.
Yeah.
So you can say that word. It's like, well, maybe I heard that word before. But then when they hear the sound, it's like, ah, okay. And even if it's just the Crocodile Dundee movies or
Yeah.
the Foster's beer commercial where there's didgeridoo underneath it, or the Outback Steakhouse, anything to do with Australia, most likely there's going to be a didgeridoo underneath it.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah. I mean, one thing is really cool is like once people realize what that sound is, then they start picking it out in all
It's
these
true.
different locations.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And another thing is I'm not an Aboriginal guy. I'm not from Australia. I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia in the
Oh,
60s and
really?
70s.
Okay.
Yeah. So I grew up on rock and roll and funk and Motown and psychedelic stuff and world music. So that's my musical background.
Yeah.
But I play this really cool ancient instrument from Australia. So what I do is I put that instrument in my musical roots and I kind of mix it up that way. And I love putting the didgeridoo in all kinds of musical settings, and
Yeah.
it fits in almost everything. And actually, there's an Aboriginal guy named William Barton, and he plays didgeridoo with the Sydney Symphony.
Wow. That's very cool. I love that.
Mhm.
Now, how hard would it be if people are listening to this and going, you know what, I could use a little bit of that, right? Maybe before I go into an important negotiation or a difficult conversation, or just to have moments of calm in my life where I can sort of get in a more meditative place. How easy is it to learn to play the didgeridoo, and where would they get them?
Yeah. Well, I make instruments. I've been handcrafting instruments for
Wow.
30 years. So on my website, I have a store page so they can go right
Cool.
there and check that out. As well as I started teaching online way before COVID. So I do in person, online, in group settings and
Yeah.
private, one-on-one settings. So yes, I'm a teacher as well.
That's fantastic. And how long would it take if somebody comes with, obviously, which I assume almost everybody comes with zero experience on this, how long would it take them typically to get to a place where they could, even at a rudimentary level, sort of be enjoying it?
Yeah, it depends on the person, really. I
Of
mean, some
course.
people can do it right away, right off the bat, like, wow, I sound great. And other people really have to work at it. I was
Yeah.
one of those people. I really, really had to work at it. And but again, the first goal is to get that nice drone sound from the beginning to the end of your breath consistently. And once you have that, then we can build on it. But for some people, that comes, in a couple weeks, the initial drone, and some
Yeah.
people 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
It really depends on their ability and their desire and commitment, really.
Yeah. Well, and hats off to you. I didn't realize, I just assumed, go show you, don't assume anything, that this was something that came super easy to you. So I think it makes your
No.
story even more compelling that you made that choice to work at it. And what, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that made you, like a lot of people, especially if you were facing that dark place, what was it about this instrument that caused you to put in that extra effort?
Well, I just internally, spiritually, I felt connected to this thing. It's
Oh,
like, all right, this is really a powerful thing. And oh my God, it's been going on for thousands of years. But if I pick this up right now and I play properly, I'm doing the same thing that those folks were doing thousands of years ago
mhm.
in current day.
I love that. That's so cool. I love that. It's funny you say that, because that was exactly when I went to Machu Picchu. I was
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, I am walking on stone here that, people walked on thousands of years ago. Like, there's something so surreal and connecting at the same time, right? That's a really interesting experience. So,
Yeah.
well, this has been super fun. And I hope you do take up the idea as well about, I think getting that into the hands of business and professionals out there who, just to give a little perspective, I think we are in a really polarized place in the world right now, and having something like this, I think, can really make a profound change. So,
Yeah, I would love to do that. And, I go to schools, I go to festivals, I go to retreat centers. So why not a corporate situation where if they're open to it, I'm happy to go there and share what I know.
yeah, I may want to rename this episode here. I think I said at the outset, I introduced it as negotiating better health, but I think it goes way beyond that. Actually, I think you can actually negotiate better outcomes with this, right? Not so this has been a surprising interview for me, because I'm
Excellent.
glad I picked up and invited you. Now, I normally like to end by asking, what's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life? That doesn't have to be connected to this instrument, just anything that's happened in your life when you have one of those aha moments that makes you see things differently.
Yeah, I think in order to be successful with your path, you have to believe in yourself. You
Mm,
have to have that self-confidence. And until if you don't have that, that's a tough one to try to move
yeah,
forward in your life with. So once you have that self-confidence, you got to believe in yourself. You got to love yourself, number one, and then from there you take off. So maybe
yeah.
that's it, really believing in yourself.
Oh, that's a pretty profound mindset shift, because really at its core, everything comes back to self-love. So most of us, I think, go through life getting our validation externally, right? Which is where all of the angst in the world comes from, always trying to please others, do what others expect of us. And I think if from a young age, you can learn to just love yourself unconditionally, warts and all, everything else flows from that, right? If you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you came to that realization? Because that's a pretty profound shift.
Yeah, I think maybe when I was in my late teens,
Yeah.
I was still in a wacky headspace, but
Yeah.
like I believed in myself. It's like, yeah, I could do this. And I started performing in bands in my 20s.
Yeah.
And to get up on stage, you got to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the audience knows right away that you're not there. So
Yeah.
you got to believe in yourself, and then the love will come to you.
Yeah. And that's such valuable advice. So it's a perfect closing answer there, Pitz, because in negotiation as well, it is all about being able to show up with that confidence. And like you, I'm a big believer that that confidence comes from a combination of self-love and the knowledge that comes from preparation. You put those together, right? It's a pretty amazing, powerful combination. So tell our audience, where our listeners and our viewers out there, where can they learn more about you if they want to get a didgeridoo, learn how to play the didgeridoo, have them come and speak to their workplace or their kids' schools? Where can they learn about you?
Sure. Well, the first thing they could do, they can ask their smart speaker, if you want to hear my music, just say play Pitz Quattrone, and boom, I'm on like pretty much every platform.
That's cool.
But my website is myname.com, and it's a funky one. It's pitzquattrone.com. That's Pitzquattrone, pitzquattrone.com. Or if you want to just search Vermont Didgeridoo or Pitz, Pitz, Didge, I'll be the first 100 things that pop up.
Okay, we'll be sure to put those in the show notes as well. And I
Okay.
have to ask, since if you don't mind, is that your given name, or did you choose that name? It is such a cool name.
Thank you. My dad and my grandmom gave it to me when I was moments old, because where my dad's from in Italy, his family, there's this thing called a pizzagini kiss. And so they grabbed the baby's cheeks and kissed the baby like
Yeah.
right away. So well, they did that to me, and I would laugh, and then they would keep doing it, and I would laugh every time. And my dad told me eventually all he had to do was say that word, pizzagini, and I would start laughing.
That's
So
so
it
good.
started calling me Little Pizzagini, and then it got shortened to Pitsy, and then some in my early teens, I dropped the Y and just went with Pitts.
So cool. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been a load of fun.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite, Cindy.
And for our listeners and our viewers out there, I'm sure that you got lots of value from this. It was I mean, it's so much fun on the one hand, and surprisingly beneficial as well. So I really invite you to maybe explore these unexpected expected options to go out into the world, to be able to just show up with more joy in your life, to be able to find ways to ground yourself, and the surprising health benefits that come from that. And also with that grounding, I think a better ability to step into the best version of yourself. I'm going to just practice until I get there. I'm just going to be doing the every time when my kids are driving me crazy before I come out to talk, just let myself get grounded there. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that already, and make sure to share this with others that you think could get some value from the message. And before we sign off today, as always, just want to share a few ways that we can work together. If you happen to be looking to uplevel your negotiation skills, I've got everything from online to group to my signature VIP or mastermind experiences. It'll help you better leverage your innate power to be able to get more of what you want and deserve in life. So if that sounds interesting, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com. Make sure to grab the book if you haven't yet, The Art of Feminine Negotiation, How to Get What You Want from the Boardroom to the Bedroom. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.